Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Ajay Solkhe, presently working as Assistant Professor, University School of Management, Kurukshetra University, Kurukshetra, Haryana. Upon completion of the module, the students should be able to understand the key issues and challenges the industrial relation is confronting in the competitive business environment, the recent trends and developments in the field of industrial relations, and lastly, some of the ethical considerations in industrial relations. The traditional industries, they are facing acute competition and have also started thinking to become smart by shredding their extra baggage by resorting to restructuring and re-engineering. This has been necessitated also by day-to-day technological innovations and their application in industry. The exercise amounts to generating surpluses and its management. This has created real HR crisis for the emerging industry. Some of the changes in contemporary business environment for emerging industries, the required organizational structure is not a monolithic and pyramidal one. It is a flat, lean and smart, almost leading to a virtual kind of organization. The offices are intelligent, paperless and fitted with all modern electronic gadgets which require very few manpower. Employers are global with multi-locational working dispensations. They like to approach their employees directly without intervention of any outside agency like trade unions. They negotiate with their employees on all matters including compensation package and productivity. Encouraged by the success of new management principle, they introduce HR interventions like quality circles, worker empowerment, team working, etc. to reach the workers directly. The employees these days are knowledge employees. They are younger, they are educated, they are full of expectations and aspirations and career oriented. The manpower is diverse with multicultural, bilingual employees and a sizable number of female employees. Their problems and perspectives are totally different from those of old blue collar employees. New players like consumer forums, NGOs, environmental campaigners and electronic media are replacing trade unions in many grey areas. Flexibility has become of vital importance, which may be enterprise flexibility like outsourcing, franchising, etc., or labor flexibility like numerical flexibility, skill flexibility, functional flexibility, locational flexibility, pay flexibility, and place flexibility. Contracting out of non-core activities like catering and housekeeping services, security, parking, courier services, medical and health services, education and training, etc. have become common. Changing pattern of managerial practices, diverse forms of employment, lifelong employment versus short term, part-time employment, house worker, contract worker, contingent worker, international workers are regular features. Changing nature of work, robotized working, unmanned workstation, field work, open 24 hours, 365 days is yet another new phenomenon. Use of electronic gadgets in the offices like telephones, mobile phones, computers and its numerous utilities such as MS Office, email, SMS, internet have made them self-reliant. Pressure from international bodies, International Labour Organization, WTO, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, International Labour Standards, they are exerting pressure on industrial relations. These business scenarios require a different brand of employee relations. Issues and challenges for industrial relations in competitive business environment. Here we are going to examine the 6 challenges. First is changing organization. Second is changing profiles and characteristics of the employees. Third is casualization. Fourth is increased complexity and diversity. Fifth is disinvestment, deregulation and decentralization. Lastly, the other categories of challenges. Changing organizations. In the past, organizations have focused on growing bigger and better. Today, increasingly, international competition and the rapid pace of technological change are favoring organizations to become lean, faster and flexible. In fact, most of the organizations, they are downsizing, decoupling and disaggregating. Changing profiles and characteristics of the employees. The color of the collar of the worker in the organized sector is changing. New technologies have in several cases reduced the difference between blue and white collar workers. The proportion of white collar employees is increasing among the full-time regular employees in the organized sector. Thus, today in the organized sector, there are less of working class and more of the middle class workers. Alongside the change in the profile of the workforce, there is also a change and escalation in the aspirations of the employees. They are less eager to join a trade union and much less keen to join a protest meeting or participate in a strike. Further, in the organized sector, there is a gradual reversal in the ratio of executive to non-executives. Over the years, in most companies, executives outnumbered non-executives. This is a consequence of the variety of managerial responses to face the competitive challenges. Firstly, they should overcome problems in dealing with the protected worker under the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. Technological changes eliminating the 3D jobs, dirty, dangerous and drudgerous, and lower and middle level information gathering and processing tasks warranting different kinds of age, skill mix among the employees. And lastly, contracting out and outsourcing, whereby the permanent employee strength shrinks to accommodate those with core and critical skills while banishing the rest to the periphery of the organization in casual, contract and contingent deployment. Casualization. Over the past 15 years, there has been a steep increase in the contract labor system and casualization of labor, which has put workers to a greater disadvantage compared to the regular full-time employees, while the full-time employees have relatively better skills and training. They work less and under safer conditions with better income job and social security. Their counterparts in the unorganized and casual contract and contingent employment are less skilled, less trained, work more under less safe conditions. They earn less and enjoy little or no job, income and social security. Increased complexity and diversity. Labor is in the concurrent list of the distribution of powers between the Union and the states of India, with both the central and the state government having power to legislate on certain similar matters concerning industrial relations. With the political and ideological affiliations of the parties in power at the central and the state level being varied, it must be difficult to have a single and unified model of industrial relations. With the general weakening of the tripartite system, it has become difficult to achieve any consensus on uniform patterns of industrial relations policy. Attempts at reforms in labor relations system and practices at the central level have therefore remained inconclusive. According to one view, the conventional system of industrial relation based on rules and regulations and their enforcement has become obsolete. In the current economic scenario, stress needs to be laid on human resource management, which further considers that conflict is not natural to industry and that it arises only on account of bad management. It is necessary that management give up then reactive policies and adopt a proactive approach to get the best out of the workers in their respective organizations. The future of industrial relations should be oriented towards human resource management that believes in investment in human capital and involvement of people in all matters that affect them both at the workplace and beyond, seeking to secure a work-life balance. This means development of competence, multi-skilling, career planning and work that meets the expectation of the workers and secures a balance between the requirements of the organization and the family needs of the workers. Continuous improvement of work through workers' initiative, emphasis on equity and fair play, trust and transparency, judicious exercise of power and authority, better understanding and cooperation between management and workers and greater devolution of authority at all levels, and decentralization of decision making are all aspects which go a long way in promoting commonality of interest, securing the twin objectives of equity and efficiency. Disinvestment, deregulation and decentralization. Disinvestment, often viewed as synonymous with privatization. It affects industrial relations in the following ways. First of all, it changes ownership, which may bring about changes not only in work organization and employment, but also in trade union organization and trade union dynamics. It changes the work organization by necessitating retraining and redeployment. It affects the rights of the workers and trade unions, including job, union security, income security and social security. Trade unions, managements and often governments have together been responding to these challenges through various types of new and innovative model arrangements to deal with different aspects of disinvestment. These include making workers the owners through issue of shares or controlling interest, negotiating higher compensation for voluntary separations, safeguarding existing benefits, setting up further employment generating programs, and proposals for setting up new safety nets that include not only unemployment insurance but also skills provisions for redundant workers. Deregulation, especially in the sphere of labor laws, usually results in erosion of the accrued interests of workers and trade unions. The issue here often concerns enacting minimal protective measures to ensure that transferred public sector government employees receive similar protection as is provided in public and government employment. The worst affected are the pension provisions. While in the past pension schemes usually provided defined benefits, in the post-globalization era it is often restricted to defined contributions. This means usually a reduction in pension benefits and an uncertainty concerning future provision of pension benefits due to the absence of government guarantees, falling interest rates, investment of pension funds in stock market. Decentralization. Decentralization of industrial relations is seen in terms of the shift in consideration of industrial relations issues from macro to micro and from industry to enterprise level. When the coordination is at the national or sectoral level, in the event of industrial conflict, work in the entire industry can be paralyzed. But when the dispute is at the bank level, in the absence of centralized coordination by trade unions, only work in that bank is paralyzed and other banks function normally. This weakens the bargaining power of unions. Some of the more categories of challenges which have been identified are technology and job creation, skill development, labor mobility, labor commitment, work culture, productivity and competitiveness. Emerging trends in industrial relations. The emerging industrial relations scenario is quite complex. The existing regional and social imbalances are being exacerbated in the wake of the far-reaching economic changes, ushered into the economy without much consultation with the concerned social partners. Some states they are waking up to the needs for wooing investment, foreign and domestic, and creating jobs. In the process, they are resorting to competitive labor policies that are investor friendly. The polarization of several industrial relation policies and legislative measures due to the center-state government differences points to an increasing diversity in industrial relations context with varying impacts on trade unions, collective bargaining in different states. Here, union membership is declining in some states while it is increasing in others. Strikes by trade union is on the decline, but is offset by the increasing incidence of lockouts and strike measures by the organization. Central laws being the same, their interpretation by the judiciary and the perception of the labor administration are changing over time, giving rise to new thinking on the subject. Where trade union action is lacking, non-governmental organizations they are rushing to fill the vacuum, particularly in matters pertaining to minimum wages, living conditions in the unorganized sector, and occupational safety, environment, etc. in both the organized and the unorganized sectors. Emerging trends in industrial relations. Here we are going to examine some of the emerging trends in industrial relations. The very first is paradigm shift in managing work and worker. Secondly, we are going to examine some of the new actors and the related dynamics, pro-labor, pro-investor policies, changed mindset of the judiciary, legislature and executive, worker militancy replaced by employer militancy, declining trade union density, and lastly, collective bargaining. Trend 1. Paradigm shift in managing work and worker. In the sphere of work organization and workplace governance, the focus is shifted from managing work rather than managing the worker. Changes in labor policy and labor law in many countries around the world are increasingly focusing on flexibility and consciousness. As a result, new initiative in labor market policies include new arrangements for funding skills development. Workplace adjustment is being encouraged in several parts of the world through making administrative clearances for separations redundant so long as the requirement of prior notice, information, consultation and compensation to the affected workers are met. Worker involvement and participation. In the sphere of worker involvement and participation, the major shift is in terms of a clear preference for the new human resource policies for employees rather than union participation, direct rather than representative participation, and encouragement for small group activities, and emphasize problem solving rather than preoccupation with individual or collective grievances in participative form. The attitudinal disposition of the parties needed to be more conducive than it has been long. Collective bargaining. In collective bargaining, some of the shifts include centralization to decentralization, collective to individual contracts, parity to disparity, increased wages or benefits accompanied by erosion of job control, concession bargaining, assertion of managerial rights than the rights of the workers, attendance, skill or performance linked, then age weighted and seniority based wages and benefits. Some of these trends were considered disturbing, especially from the employee's point of view. Trend 1. Social security. The shift in employees' benefits and social security arrangements are mainly in terms of greater concern for post-retirement portable benefits, be it provident fund, pension or health insurance. The shift from welfare to money fare through the conversion of several to the welfare benefits into cash is, however, a worrisome development. The other trend is a shift in retirement benefits from defined benefits to defined contributions. This puts the real value of retirement benefits at the serious risk. Trend 2. New actors and the emerging dynamics. Traditionally, industrial relation was the concern of three principal actors: workers and their unions, managers, employers and the government. But in the post-liberalization era, globalization era, consumers and the community have begun to assert themselves and play a significant role. When the rights of consumers and the community are affected, the rights of workers, unions and managers, employers take a back seat. The court rulings are borne by the realization that wider public good matters most in preference to the narrow self-interest of a minority. Workers and unions in particular are asked to assert their rights without impinging on the rights of the others, particularly the consumers and the community. Hence, the ban on bandh and restrictions, even on protests and dharnas, increasingly trade unions are getting isolated and see future for themselves only by aligning themselves with the interest of the wider society. Trend 3. Pro-labor, pro-investor policies. World over, when the states assumed a welfare role and adopted pro-labor policies, the trade unions grew in strength and power. When the state becomes neutral, the trade union movement stagnated. Now, when mostly the states have adopted pro-investor policies, trade unions are declining in power and influence, if not in numbers. In such circumstances, unless trade unions forge broader alliances with the society, consumers and community and various civil society institutions, including non-governmental organizations, they will find their powers dwindling. Trend 4. Changed mindset of the judiciary, legislature and executive. A remarkable feature of industrial relation in the wake of globalization is the gradual withdrawal of the state from its traditional role of actively supporting organized labor. Labor law reforms remain taboo, but both the judiciary and the labor administration and adjudication machinery have been more willing than before to entertain the concerns of the industry. Typically, conciliation machinery is showing concern for issues relating to competitiveness and flexibility and considering issues like increase in productivity, cost reduction, modernization, retraining and redeployment. There is less emphasis on reinstatement and regularization of dismissed employees. Some of the state governments have taken the initiative to make small changes in labor laws and have made major efforts in drastically simplifying the returns to be submitted by employers and ease the pressure of labor inspections. Even the central government is considering the closure of certain industrial units for the long-term viability and competitiveness of enterprises. Trend 5. Declining trade union density. In the traditional strongholds of trade union membership, government and public sector, the workforce is declining due to non-filling of vacancies and introduction of voluntary nearly separation schemes. New employment opportunities, they are shrinking in these sectors. In the private sector, particularly the service and the software sectors, the new, young and female workers are generally less eager to join unions. Trade unions are still to conceive and implement meaningful strategies to make unionism relevant and appealing to these new and diverse work groups. It is mainly in the unorganized sector, thanks to the initiatives that the government is willing to consider in the realm of social security benefits, there is a prospect of rise in trade union membership. Here too, trade unions are finding an adversary in a group that is otherwise considered an ally, the non-governmental organization operating under the guise of or as virtual trade unions. Trend 6. Worker militancy replaced by employer militancy. Economic reforms introduced in India in 1991 signify India's quest for global economic integration. During the decade 1981 to 90, India had lost 402.1 million man-days due to industrial conflict, whereas in the subsequent decade 1991 to 2000, the number came down to half to 10 million. This does not mean that the industrial relations situation has improved substantially. Workers are increasingly more circumspect and hence reluctant to go on strikes because of the fear of job insecurity, concern about the utility of strikes, and the realization about the imperative need to consider the survival of enterprises as a prerequisite for employment and income security. Trade unions, they are hesitant to give a call for a strike because it may lead to loss of jobs or closure of the unit. What is even more striking is that over 60% of the man-days lost in the post-reform period were due to the lockouts and less than 40% were due to strikes. One measure of trade unions becoming more defensive rather than offensive, whereas employers can be seen from the shift in their actions from strikes to lawsuit. Also, instead of pressing for higher wages and improved benefits, trade unions are pressing for maintenance of existing benefits and protection and claims over non-payment of agreed wages and benefits. Trend 7. Collective bargaining. With the shift in level of coordination and bargaining from national, sectoral to enterprise or plant level, the bargaining power of trade union is shrinking. Also, there is a gradual movement away from party to disparity. Indications for the future. In a general way, conventional notions about industrial relations as the relations between management and unions will undergo substantial changes. Increasingly, customer focus, both internal and external, will tend to be a decisive factor. Non-union firms, they are likely to proliferate in the future. Therefore, the already pluralistic industrial relations will have further dimensions added to it. The plurality of industrial relations will be seen not merely in terms of the organized and the unorganized, but also union and non-union firms and industries in different stages of business cycle. Industrial relations will increasingly be driven by contextual factors at the micro level, even as macro aspects continue to influence the inputs, labor institutions, structures, processes and outputs. The field of IR will thus have a wider scope, so that it comes to be referred to as employment relations, covering the entire gamut of employment. The changing nature of work, changing profiles of employees, and the ascendancy of managerial power through technology and market-oriented policies of the state means that trade unions have to search for a new form and structure for maintaining voice and representation. In certain other cases, the management will resist unionization. In yet others, the state is seeking in its bid to desperately woo investors to exempt enterprises from the operation of trade unions and the exercise of core labor standards. The basic philosophy of industrial relations may not change with changes in industrial strategies, but the underlying strategies and tactics of the social partners will. Central to the philosophy of future industrial relations will be the core values such as equity and fairness, exercise of power and authority, notions about individuality and collectivism, trust and transparency, and efficiently and equity. Competition and globalization, they need high performance organization, Moreover, employees who man such organization will have new demographic and social characteristics and new and higher expectations. The major changes in employment relations, industrial relations will be with regard to the following four dimensions: flexible and adaptive work organization, continued emphasis on the development of skills and competencies, contingent compensation systems, and the workplace governance that recognizes the need for increased say and stake for the employees at all levels as well as job satisfaction. Friends, I hope you have understood the contents well. You can also refer to other quadrants of this module for testing your knowledge and having some more input on theme of the module. Happy learning.